far. We're going to keep talking about things that are relevant to our lives today, in our country and in our world. And today I have a gentleman who is a businessman. He is also an attorney, and he ran for Senate in 2018. So we'll get into some of the, politically related items here at the end of the conversation today, and invite you guys to jump in. Chat is open. He's also the founder of an organization called American Awakening. And as Christians, I think we can all agree that our country and every country definitely needs an awakening. Of course, we're concerned with where we live, but I think the principles transcend. So, Judy, you up in Canada, and you others watching around the world, the principles will apply regardless of where you're at. He has a new book just dropped, and it is called American Awakening. I'll show you the cover right there. Looks a little bit like a Woodstock poster, but that is the book cover. 8 Principles to Restore the Soul of America. So we're going to get into some of that, but I want to actually show you something here at the top that caught my attention, because just a couple of weeks ago, not even, I guess a week or so ago, there was an event, and it featured some people that I really enjoy, including this man, David Crowder, also Lecrae, and for King and Country. And that is available. You can go watch that on YouTube, what you're watching right now. It's called American Awakening Presents Better Together. So something a little fun for you to check out. John Kingston, welcome to Life Today Live.
Well, my goodness, it's so good to be with you today and all your viewers. Thank you for having me with you, Randy. Really appreciate that.
So I just showed a little shot of the David Crowder performing up on a rooftop in Nashville. What was that event, that Better Together event?
Yeah, so look, this is emblematic of this very unique event is emblematic of what the spirit of American Awakening is about. My book launched last Tuesday, July 28th, and on Tuesday night, we launched this concert production as well. And it was a really remarkable time. It was, as you say, Lecrae for King and Country, Jonathan McReynolds, Crowder. And so we brought these guys together, in Corona, the pain of all that for everybody around the world, around the U.S., and the time of racial reckoning, which followed, just so much pain, in America and the church and otherwise. 80% of Americans think the country is spiraling out of control, according to a recent NBC Wall Street Journal poll. And so there's a remarkable unanimity on only one thing, that we're somehow spiraling out of control, which is not a good thing to be, forming a consensus on. And so this group of Christian artists, came to a rooftop in Nashville. Amazing production, guys. If you haven't seen it yet, I recommend it, because the production value, the artistry, afternoon performances running into sunset and sundown with drones and Nashville skyline. It was just gorgeous. And they were declaring with us from the rooftops of Nashville this message: we are, as Americans, and certainly as people of faith, better together. And so American Awakening is all about that.
Since you ran for Senate in the state of Massachusetts in 2018, correct?
That is right, yes.
On the GOP side, which has got to be a little tough in Massachusetts.
Yeah. I was running for the seat that is occupied by Elizabeth Warren, and she was she's a very unpopular even in Massachusetts. A Republican governor, Charlie Baker, has got 70%-ish approval ratings, and Elizabeth Warren was in the 40s. So she was kind of vulnerable this cycle, but I didn't get my shot, and so it goes. But what I'm about, basically. Is Randy is I'm against extremist politics on both sides. I'm very much a believer in the fact that as Americans, what we have to return to is a principle of, it's not Republican, it's not Democrat, it's not black, white, Latino, Asian, young, old, rich, poor. My management team of my campaign was made up of, the senior management team was made up of black and white, Latino and Asian, Democrat, independent, Green Party even in the management team. And that's who we are, is certainly as people of faith, right? As people of faith, we are certainly that. And I think that if the church is going to do what the church ought to do, it needs to be modeling, that for America more broadly, or we're gonna lose our relevance. I think, or we're going to continue to lose our relevance. I think better put, because I'll say one more thing on that and turn it over to you. It's just, just the idea is, as people of faith, we know that God of the universe loves us, made us all in His image, made every single person, in His image as His child, his or her, him or her as a child of God, and that's what the American promise, all are created equal, that remarkable founding promise 244 years ago, came out of that earth-shattering, inspired idea. But if we're not modeling that, why do we expect anybody else to? Why would we think that people who don't even believe that, in the same anchoring principles about God's love for us all and love your neighbor as yourself? If we can't do that for ourselves, then I guess I got to question where the transformative power and where salt and light is.
Yeah. Quick question for you, and I'll just ask it straight up. I'm pretty hardcore conservative, politically, and ideologically. I'm guessing that you would consider yourself more moderate Republican. Am I right?
Well, so I guess we could go to, I have a feeling that you and I could talk a long time on this topic. I'm actually very conservative.
Okay.
But my conservatism, runs along the lines of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln and Martin Luther King, who was a Republican once upon a time, Reagan,
JFK.
I'm sorry?
JFK, John F. Kennedy.
Yeah, my goodness, he was a conservative, right?
Sure.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's so just right, but for the conservative icons, freedom and liberty and equality and opportunity for everybody, and which means, for most of us conservatives, limited government, and because we think the less the government does, the more that freedom and liberty holds, and all of that. So I think, so I'm pretty hardcore in all that, and I just don't think that's being demonstrated by certainly not the Democratic Party, but it's also not being demonstrated by the Republican Party these days.
Okay.
So
All right.
that's my probably maybe where we would part ways a little bit on the topic.
Oh, well, that's always fun for me to find out is where we differ, because when we're the same, that's great, but we'll have some fun with that later. I want to jump to the book, though, and again, the cover, American Awakening. Your 8 principles to restore the soul of America. Where are you coming from on this, and what are you trying to communicate?
Yeah, well, I think the book is for everybody, everybody and anybody who thinks that something doesn't feel right now in America, or in their own lives, or in their community. So pretty much everybody. And so it's a lot. It's got a lot in common with books like Rick Warren's Purpose-Driven Life, or Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It tried to reduce really powerful big concepts to something which is simple and direct, reminding us of who we are as people. What we're supposed to do to live a productive and constructive and successful life, how we're supposed to live in community together, and what the American ideals are, around which we can all agree, reminding us of the greats that have brought us there before. So basically, I did, a combination of, I worked with neuroscientists, social scientists, Harvard social scientists, Ohio State neuroscientists, as well as did my own survey of the great works through the ages. Obviously I write as a Christian, because that's my anchoring conviction. But it's written in a way that it's supposed to be able to appeal to people that don't share, my faith.
Yeah. Good.
And so both of the Jewish traditions and the Muslim traditions and Eastern philosophies and the Stoics and the Aristotelians and the Enlightenment philosophers, on and on and on, and say, hey, these are the principles about purpose. You're put on a planet for a reason, and people I just found when I was on the campaign trail, people had lost track of the fact that they're made in the image of a creator of the universe, and they're here for purpose and meaning and significance. If you forget that, then this whole thing becomes a tough slog. And so just reminding people of anchoring commitments, anchoring ideas about who we are and why we're here and how we're supposed to live and work together, because that's the big story. It's a big story that Christians know or sometimes forget, though.
Yeah, concede the point. undoubtedly. I'm curious because you're talking about coming together. You talk about finding common ground, and you drop that book in the middle of an atmosphere where there seems to be very little, or in some cases, no common ground. The country is dividing, not uniting. I think much of that's politically driven. But um, what what do you see as a sort of a practical solution? And the difficulty is, yeah, when we go to the scripture, we can find common ground. We can all come together on that, and in a sense, theoretically, idealistically, all problems go away. Really, though, we're dealing with people who reject the Bible, who actually reject the founding of America, and the Constitution, and Bill, things like that. How do we find common ground with such a huge gap between people?
Well, I would contest the point just a little bit.
Okay.
Reject is strong. That the people that you're talking about in many cases. Look, I've been advancing conservative viewpoints and Christian viewpoints my entire life. And taught undergrads at Harvard once upon a time. Taught with somebody who was quite liberal, person of faith, and clerked with somebody who was a pretty liberal judge. I went to Harvard Law School once upon a time, galaxy far, far away. I've always been in these circles, but advancing, sort of conservative and Christian views, and finding common cause. And for example, I started the first pro-life, pro-religious liberties organization at Harvard Law School with David French, who you might know the work of.
Sure.
David's a dear friend. We've been partnering together for 3 decades, he and I. The point is that what you find is, when you strip away from the point of the greatest controversy right in front of you, you will find remarkable consensus around the most fundamental dimensions of who we are as people, oftentimes. So, for example, I assure you that, white or black or farthest left or farthest right, when you talk about like what people want, they want security for themselves and their family, right? They want their kids to have an opportunity. They want to thrive and flourish as people. Now, there's profound disagreements about how to get there, right?
Yeah, right.
Unbelievable disagreements how to get there. But what I found is, let me take a really super controversial one, right? Immigration, which just is just crushed us as a country for 15 years plus now, and division and all of that. But the amazing thing is that if you just get away from all the symbols of what divides us on that, sanctuary cities or walls or whatever, what you'll find is remarkably, I said earlier that it's amazing if 80% of Americans agree on anything, which is really true. Well, 80% of Americans agree that we ought to have strong border policies, and we should enforce them. 80% plus. 80% plus. 80+% of people think that, if somebody does something illegal in our country, we should send them back. So that's kind of the so-called sanctuary cities argument. And then 80% of people believe, 80+% believe that, like, hey, if you got here through no fault of your own and you're here, you've been here for decades, you're DACA kid, dreamer, whatever you want to call it, well, maybe you should stay here. So basically, you have this remarkable thing. I'm taking a super controversial, a topic, right? Like we can't figure that out together. And if you drill it all the way down, if you could strip away all the noise around this stuff, you strip it all away, then people have it. They kind of think, some people should be citizens and some people shouldn't. So we should we have rules around who comes in. We send them out if they're not doing the right thing. And some people kind of ended up here, and it's probably too disruptive to send them all back.
Yeah.
And so, that's just something which, like, we've been arguing about endlessly for decades.
Yeah.
Where anchoring convictions as being, people of freedom, opportunity, but also humanity, rules, law, all that. Our similarities are greater than our differences.
Yeah. Well, being born and raised in Texas, this is this is definitely a thing down here, and I've told people, and my son's experiencing this now on the job site. But I got to tell you, the Mexicans and now the more Central Americans that are coming across the border, not always legally, some of the best people you could ever want in your country. Hard workers, honest, frugal, conservative in their family values. I would actually trade. I can't say that.
I know you're about to go. I know you're going to.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
Okay, so just remind people, we're talking to John Kingston. This is his book. It's called American Awakening. He is founder of an organization by the same name. This is the website for American Awakening, americanawakening.us, if you're looking for that. So do check that out. And so I actually agree with you 100%. We could come together and solve a lot of the immigration issues. I personally think that both sides don't want to solve it, so they have it as a political wedge every 2 or 4 years. But that's my own theory.
I completely agree with you. We are being managed and manipulated by leadership away from our truest selves. It's perfect. You just said it just right. That's a perfect example of American Awakening. 8 principles to restore the soul of America. The principle is, hey, we don't have to fight about that. We really don't, because we're pretty much on the same side. Yeah,
and I have had those conversations with liberals and find out on immigration especially, it's not as big of a divide. Here's where I do see a bigger divide. And case in point, last weekend in Portland, there's video footage of them burning Bibles and an American flag, and then some other stuff got thrown in. But there were evidently a few Bibles. Someone had a stack of Bibles that they were burning. And you wonder, okay, is that just some idiot, whatever, or is that a real thing? And so I started looking on Twitter. I swam through the cesspool of Twitter for a bit to research it, and found that there were quite a few people defending it, and some identified with Antifa or the Portland protests. One of them in particular said, the reason we're burning Bibles is because the Bible defends slavery. Okay. Here's an area where those who either think that about Scripture or flat out just don't believe in God, it's a little more difficult, I think, sometimes to find that common ground and starting point. And I'm not suggesting we shouldn't try. I agree with you. We should always try. But are there any irreconcilable differences, do you think, in this country? And if so, how do we deal with those?
Well, so I will agree with you that there are 10%. I'm just going to use that number. 10% of people on the far left and 10% of people on the far right that are just deciding, I don't want to participate, in a liberal public square. When I mean liberal, I don't mean modern liberal, like classic liberal. Like, hey, sure. I respect everybody's conscience, and we all come to this with different viewpoints. I mean, that's made in the image of God stuff right there. Mm-hmm. Straight up is, that's where the American Project started, with this conscience idea. And so, unfortunately, there are some people that are, completely dedicated to that idea, that we should be illiberal on either side, like, not be fair to each other. Unfortunately, too many people on both sides are getting swept up in that thing. So basically, those voices seem to actually capture, more of us, and or people seem to be unfairly identified with it, or more identified with it they should be, and so on and so forth. And so we have to keep on beating that back. I agree, and that's where I think the 80% of Americans think that things are spiraling out of control view comes from. That there's that sense that sensible people, like a Texan conservative like you, and a New York City liberal, like, I don't know, I'm not even going to come up with a name right now, but say, you know what, you both love the country. You have different takes on different things. New York City doesn't have to be Dallas, and Dallas doesn't have to be New York City, and so let's just let it be, right? Yeah.
And you know what, I appreciate your optimism, because I do think that's how we have to operate on a daily basis, is to find the common ground. And the weird thing about social media is that we tend to go right to the most divisive thing amongst us and
Exactly.
chirp about
And
that. And I'm guilty of that too. But
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, obviously in this era, you can't not talk about that in a book about restoring the soul of America, and just wrestling with the fact that, the disinformation campaigns, the misinformation campaigns, the fact that people losing their anchoring, their actual humanity, through the social media world. I mean, it's just brutal. And we have, a decade from now, I promise you, 2030, call it, give or take, we'll have figured out how to use these tools. But right now, human beings in the West are just lost with these tools. We just don't know how to be real people with them. We don't know how to shut them off. We don't know how to, convey, empathy and reason through them, et cetera, et cetera. So,
yeah.
Yeah. I agree. It's tough right now.
I think actually a lot of people do. They're just not the loudest, and they don't pummel your stream with content over and over 5-10 times a day. Okay, so I want to ask you about some big political issues, and please don't hold back. Disagree with me if you want publicly. I'm okay with that. So I want to hear the true take. And first I'm going to ask you about Trump, but I'm going to show your website again because I want to mention one more thing. John Kingston's at AmericanAwakening.org. He also has a podcast out, so where he talks about these things, and you can tell already that this is a man who thinks through things, who is optimistic, who has a biblical foundation, and so you might want to check out the podcast called American Awakening. It is available. But all right, John Kingston, businessman, attorney, founder of American Awakening, former U.S. Senate candidate. What do you think of Donald Trump?
Well, I think that, let me just take a big step back and say, Christian, I am. Conservative, I am. I've described the bona fides of my conservatism before, but I'm a Christian before I'm a conservative. And the anchoring principles of my Christian faith are, truth, love God with all your heart. What's the only command Jesus gave us here on the planet? Love your neighbor as yourself, right? And so I think that if you look at the last 5 years and the rise of what I'll call Trumpism, I'm not going to talk about the president as the president, but it's embodying, in what my view, a form of spiritual darkness, which is one of the many forms of spiritual darkness out there. I mean, there are lots. You identified some others, and those folks in Portland they're exhibiting one version of this. But the one that's closest to home for me is for people of faith. I mean, I grew up with this faith, and the faith that I know and I believe in, it's got truth as an anchoring point. Right? Truth is like the cornerstone of human nature. I mean, God made us, right? And love. God's, if you're not actually loving your neighbor as yourself, that's not the storyline somehow or other. Then we're just like the rest of everybody else. And so my biggest concern is not the question of Donald Trump per se, but the spirit of Trumpism, which is power politics. It's an illiberal marketplace of ideas. Our ideas, we win, you lose. That's okay. I mean, politics is sometimes like that, but for Christians, we should be like, hey, we're supposed to be taking up the concerns of everybody: equality, freedom, opportunity, all those principles. So I'm most concerned about the impact in the church, and people of faith, and our ability in the next generation. We're losing millions annually. Our net loss of people of faith, Christians, is order of magnitude 1 million plus. That was and it's just rising all the time. And I think it's because we're as materialist as anybody else, we're as power politics driven as anybody else, we're as tribal as anybody else, and so that's my long-winded answer. I hope
no, good. No, good. I love these conversations, and I think the point I'm hearing you make, the church absolutely has to transcend politics, whatever form it takes, because it's much bigger than the political stage. But I do believe we should have an impact on politics. So I ask you about Donald Trump. What do you think about Joe Biden?
Yeah, well, let's be clear. Uh, Joe Biden was the dimmest bulb in the closet for a long time in the Senate, and and I'm not naive enough to believe that his policies will align with mine, should he win the White House. Um, but I think he just he doesn't tell untruths and demean human beings every single day. And that, I mean, I have my problems with some of the positions he's taken. I work closely with Mitt Romney. I made a movie about him. I don't know if you know that movie called Mitt. When he said about Paul Ryan and Mitt in front of an audience of black voters, they're going to put you all back in chains. That was not cool. It was not cool.
Not true.
I'm sorry?
Not true.
Not true. Not true and not cool. So, I mean, yeah, he's told some whoppers over time, but there's not the same relentless assault on truth day in, day out. Order of magnitude 20,000 fact-checked untruths in the Trump administration era. So
I won't get into that argument, but man, Joe Biden has a long history of complete detachment from the truth. I saw a montage of all the times he said he got arrested last night, and he's never actually gotten arrested.
I know. I mean, when this is the closest we got to a truth these days, man.
We're in trouble, right?
We're in trouble. I mean, look, my defense of him is very tepid. But look, I mean, just pull it. We don't. Americans need to just, we just need to have a world in which the pin is not pulled out of the grenade of public conversation every single day in the middle of the room by the leader of the free world. That's my take on it. Like, sure. I mean, last night on Axios, you saw,
I heard part of that. I haven't seen all that. I heard part of it, and
now everybody's now like, well, the election's going to be contested, and you're like, oh, is he going to leave the White House if he loses?
Yeah, no, he will. I think that's bluster. But anyway, we'll see. I hope we don't have to find out, frankly, because again, I mean, politics is oftentimes what we consider the lesser of two evils, and if you don't like Trump, I don't. If you're a Christian and you're a conservative, I don't know how you would like Biden any better. But that's for us to decide.
I would ask anybody who's out there who disagrees with me. Look, it's your conscience, and that's between you and God. But if you don't see that this is an assault on our fundamental values, as Christians, just divorce the voting choice from your moral choices and stand against the lies, and demeaning daily. And unfortunately, almost nobody's done that. So in 2016, people said they were going to do that, and then you just don't see much of that anymore. You don't see many people of faith who don't say, he's basically wrong about a lot of that stuff, but lesser of two evils, blah, blah, blah. Those defenses don't get made very often these days.
I do hear a lot of it behind closed doors. You just don't hear it publicly. I mean, I've heard Robert Jeffers criticize Trump and some of his decisions. I know my dad has. And the good thing I will say, and I'm not going to run a Trump defense right now because I have one more good question for you, but I will say that those people are bringing things up behind closed doors, and Trump's actually listening. He's giving Christians an audience to at least express those things. Does he turn around and act on it? Rarely, just to be honest. But I don't know. Yeah, you're right. There are problems. There are problems on both sides. And I think, again, that's why you and I have to agree to push to a higher truth, because that's the only place we're going to find any rock-solid reliability.
Absolutely. 100% agree.
And so here's my last question, since we're about out of time, and I do appreciate one more time for people who are jumping in late. We're talking to John Kingston. This is his website, AmericanAwakening.us, and his podcast is available anytime you want to listen to it. The book is available, been out 1 week, so check it out. But I want to give you the last word as we head into, as we lived through turbulent times where people feel like the country's on the wrong track, and again, I think that's politically motivated largely. But what would you say to your son or daughter or your best friend as they go towards the election this year?
Well, I think so. The entire book and my entire movement is about recalling us to our Christian principles about who we are as human beings, number one, and number two, our American ideals. And I think we're at a time of great darkness in the land. I mean, it's undeniably, the sort of the way people feel. They can't make sense. Dark is light, and light is dark, and truth is untruth, and untruth is truth. It's just a constant assault on people's senses. And what I'd say is, find that place you can stand on, the ground that you can stand on. Go back to the basics. Know that you're made with purpose and meaning and significance. We need every one of you. We need every Texan, we need every Bostonian, to be the best versions of ourselves as children of God. And we need all of us to have recognized that's an important value, and we need each other in this great community. None of the big problems are going to ever get solved. Corona, $27 trillion debt. The conservatives used to care about that.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. And you're right. You're 100% right. Yeah.
But these things are not going to get solved by any one group of people. They're going to get solved by all of us ultimately, whatever the problem might be. And so keep fighting the good fight. Keep standing up and leaning in. And I think this darkness will clear. I think it's I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. I'm going to be totally honest with you. So I say that to steel people's nerves, but it doesn't mean your responsibility is any different. It just means it's what can you do? What is it you can do where you are in your community as a citizen, as a child of God, as a parishioner, whatever category you put yourself in. Because we're going to need all of you. We're going to need everybody to lean in and to get us past this time of darkness right now. We'll get there. We'll get there. It's the path will not be pretty. I'm pretty confident of that. But I'm a long-term bull on America, and I'm a huge bull on Christianity. Someday we're all going to be in heaven, right? And we're going to look back and say, that was some tough slogs, but God, truth, justice, mercy, that all ended up winning out. So. Yep.
Stick with that. We can't go wrong. True words never spoken. Thank you, John Kingston. I appreciate your time, your input, and all that you're doing out there with American Awakening. I'll show you guys the website one more time. Do check it out. Check out the book, the podcast, and the website, AmericanAwakening.us. We'll see you again next time on Life Today Live.